Hey teammates, this is Miss Olson today. We're going to be talking about multiplying polynomials. We're moving on to the next section, section 3 of chapter 8. And so let's get started. Our anti-set today, don't forget to sign in for attendance on Google Classroom, answer the question, and add day 4 to your table of contents. Today we're talking about multiplying polynomials. Here's some more of our diamond problems. I know we've been doing these a lot, but they are so important to what we're going to be doing in the second half of this chapter. So I want you to make sure that you're really comfortable with these. So now's a good time to pause and see if you can answer them. And we're just going to kind of work through these together. So if you remember on the top box right here is the number that we multiplied to. The box down here where there's 15, that's what we would add the numbers to, and then on the sides are the two numbers that we're either multiplying or adding. So if we want to know 13, we want a number to add to 13 that gives us 15. And so we have 2. And then 2 times 13 is 26. Okay. On number 8, we have 3. We need to divide 51 by 3. And that gives us 17. And then when we add those two numbers together, we get our bottom of our diamond, and that's 20. Our next one, we have 7. We need to add to get to 19. So 19 minus 7 is 12. And then 7 times 12 is 84. Again, number 10, we want to add two numbers together to get to 15. So we say 15 minus 7, which is 8. Then 7 times 8 is 56. Okay, just as we were talking through this, the top number is what we multiply to. So if we want to figure out the other number, we need to divide 135 by 15. We get 9. And then 9 plus 15 is 24. Last one. What number can we add to 5 to get 20? So 20 minus 5 is 15. And then 15 times 5 is 75. Hopefully you're feeling more comfortable with these and they're making more sense. You feel like you can do these quicker. Granted, these ones, some of these numbers are higher numbers than we will typically do, but it's still important to know what we're doing as we work through these diamond problems. Okay, so let's move on. Our objectives today is how do you multiply polynomials? We've added and subtracted them. We've multiplied a monomial to a polynomial, but we want to know how to multiply polynomials. So at the end of this lesson, you should be able to multiply binomials. If you remember, that means there's 2 terms, and we want to be able to multiply a binomial and a trinomial and see what that looks like. Our relevancy for this is finding area and volume, multiplying 2 sides of a square or a rectangle of some sort, where one side is x plus 4 and the other side is x plus 7, and being able to find the area of that rectangle. Your homework. There is a practice set on Google Classroom. It's multiplying polynomials. There are not very many questions on there. I think there was only about 8 on there. And that will be due on the 8th, which is on Wednesday. And then we have Math Excel Study Plan 8.3. That's also going to be due on Wednesday. Okay? Okay, so let's get into our notes. If you have your math notebook or folder with you, you'll recall that we started a foldable called Factoring Polynomials. Factoring on it. And it had multiple pages to it that you could flip through. If you find that, you can actually follow along and copy these notes down in that foldable. These next 2 slides will come straight from that foldable if you'd like to have those notes all in one place. So we're going to use something called an area model. We've been doing that for the last couple of lessons, but now we're going to expand it to be binomials instead of just a monomial times a polynomial. The same thing applies though. We're going to take this first polynomial, or binomial we can call it since it's only 2 terms, the x plus 2, and we're going to write it on the side. There's an x. Our 2 is positive, so we just write 2. And then we're going to take the other binomial, the x plus 5, and we're going to write it on the top, x. And then the 5 is positive, so we just write 5. And then we're just going to fill in the boxes. So we have our x here and our x here, multiply them together, and we get x squared. We have x here and a 5 here. We want to fill in that box. And so we get 5 times x, which is just 5x. We're going to take the 2 and the x to fill in this box. And we get 2 times x, which is 2x. And the 2 and the 5, multiply them together, you get 2 times 5, which is 10. Okay, now we need to be able to take it out of this area model. We're going to combine our like terms. If you notice right here, we have a 2x and a 5x. Those are like terms. They have the same base with the same exponent, an x to the first power, so we can combine those like terms. So we're going to write it out. X squared. We're going to add our 2 together. We have 2x plus 5x plus 10. We'll combine the 2x and the 5x. And we get x squared plus 7x plus 10. And then making sure that we've written it in standard form. Remember, with polynomials, to be in standard form, we start with our highest degree. And so our x squared goes first, and then we go in descending order from there. So we have our x squared, our x, and then no variable. Okay, let's move on to our next example, see what we can do there. We have x plus 4 and x plus 3. We're going to, they've already been written in place, and since the plus 4 is positive, we just write 4. And the plus 3 is positive, we just write 3. So we're going to go through. Our x and our x gives us x squared. And so we just fill in x squared. Our x, our x and our 3 gives us 3 times x, which is 3x. The 4 times the x is 4 times x, which is 4x. 4 and the 3 to fill in that last box is 4 times 3, which is 12. Okay, we're going to rewrite all of our terms. So we have x squared plus 3x plus 4x plus 12. Combine our like terms, and here I have my like terms right there and right there. And so we're going to just combine those. X squared plus 7x plus 12. Okay, so binomial times a binomial, use the area model, and then combine your like terms. Let's move on from here. we're not going to get too much into factoring today, but let's just kind of look at this and what it looks like to maybe go a little bit in reverse. I have an x plus 5 up here. I know that this is a plus here because that's positive. Let's write that with a pen instead. I know that's positive. So really we're just doing the division like we do with when we did our rationals with our exponents. So I have x, I need another number or variable that when I multiply it gives me x squared. So I have x there. Down here, I need something that when I multiply it, the x, I get a 3x, so that's a 3. So when you multiply all those out, you get x squared, 5x, 3x, and 15. Okay, we can kind of do the same thing here. What two numbers or variables, when you multiply them together, give you an x squared? We know that that needs to be an x and an x. And then from there, we're just looking at what do I multiply x by to get 6x? Well, that's a 6. And what do I multiply x by to get an x? Well, anything times 1 is itself again, so we just get a 1 there. Okay? And we'll get more into that in a couple of days. Let's move on and see what we can do with trinomials. So here we have 4a plus 2 and 6a squared minus a plus 2, and we want to multiply those two together. So now I have a binomial times a trinomial. Well, I'm going to take my 4a plus 2 and I'm going to write it on the side 4a and my positive 2. And then I have my trinomial, 6a squared minus a plus 2. And I'm going to write that on the top. 6a squared. That's a negative a, so I'm going to take the negative with it. And a 2. That's important to note. When we have negatives, we need to make sure we include them so that we have the correct values in our area model. Okay, and then let's fill it in. So I have 4a, and I need to multiply it by 6a squared. Well, we're just going to use what we've done before. We multiply the 4 and the 6, and that gives us 24. We multiply our variables, and we have a, and then this has a power of 1. We're going to add those. So a cubed. Okay, same thing. I have my 4a and a negative a. Well, that's like a negative 1 out front, and so a 4 times a negative 1 is a negative 4. A times a is a squared. And then I have 4a again times 2. So I'm going to take my 2 and multiply it by 4 to get 8. And then bring the a along. There's no other variable to multiply by. Okay, now let's move on to the next row. Now I have just the constant 2. We're going to multiply that by each term. So 2 times 6 is 12. And then we copy down the a squared. There's no variable over here that we need to multiply by. A 2 times a negative 1 is a negative 2, and keep that a along with it. And last but not least, we have a 2 times the 2, which is 4. Okay? Now we're going to go through, and we could combine like terms now. We could also write it all out. It doesn't really matter which way we do it. We could go through and say 24a cubed minus 4a squared plus 8a plus 12a squared minus 2a plus 4. And then combine like terms from there, where we have our squared terms there, our a terms there, and combine them that way. We could also just look in our box and do it from here. So I'm going to point that out. Here I have, oops, let me get rid of that. Here I have my a squared term and my a squared term. So when I go to write this all out, I have a 24a cubed, and then I look back at these two terms. I have 12a squared and a negative 4a squared. So that just becomes a positive 8a squared. Okay, let's see, we also know that we have our a terms. Oh, I did it again. Sorry, team. We have our 8a and our negative 2a. Those are like terms. And so we can combine those. 8a minus 2a is a positive 6a. And then that's all of our like terms, so I'm going to copy down my 4. Okay, this is our final answer, and we could have gotten there from this point here as well. Either way, whichever way makes most sense to you, you're welcome to do it. But hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Okay, at this point, we're going to go on to practice. So if you go onto Google Classroom, you'll find a practice set that goes through a little review. We'll have some monomials times binomials, and then there'll be some binomials and binomials, and then binomials and trinomials, and then there's one challenge problem on there that I think you all can handle. It's a trinomial times a trinomial. And just for clarity, a trinomial will need to have a box that has 9 boxes on it. So your box should look something like that, and you'd have a term in each box, working through each row at a time, like that. Okay. Also on, once you're done with that practice set, I would go on to Math Excel, do your study plan, the 8.3 study plan. And again, these are all due on Wednesday next week on the 8th. So take a look at those. If you have questions, don't forget that both Mrs. Tarbutton and I have office hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1 to 3. And so you can come and get some help with that. We'd love to see you there. We both miss seeing your little faces, and it was so fun to see some of you on Tuesday. I look forward to seeing you guys later. And then hopefully we feel like we've accomplished our objectives today, that you can multiply binomials, a binomial times a binomial, and that you can multiply a binomial and a trinomial. And like I said, these help us find area and volume. And so then to close today, I just want you guys to take the next 60 seconds to reflect on how you're feeling. This has been a stressful time for everybody, including Ms. Tarbutton and myself. We're still trying to figure out the best way to do this to support you so that we can all be successful. And so I want you to think of one thing that's been positive from distance learning so far. I want you to think of one thing that's been negative from distance learning so far, and maybe that's something that you need to reach out to your teachers about and ask for their help or guidance. And then take some time to think about what adjustments you need to make to your schedule, to your sleeping habits, your working habits, maybe the environment that you're trying to do your schoolwork in, so that you can be more successful over the next month. We just got word that school is going to definitely be out until April 30th, and so we've been extended another 2 weeks. So how can you be the most successful over the next month? And then don't forget your homework. Okay, if you haven't done so already, get onto Google Classroom and answer the attendance question so that you can be counted here. And then don't forget to ask questions if you need any help. Thank you.